Are you willing to be the villain in her story so you can be the hero in your own? Because choosing your peace, setting a boundary, saying, I'm not available for this friendship right now, it might piss her off. It probably will. And she might call you cold, mean, heartless, all of these other colorful words. But the truth is, she'll respect you more for choosing self-respect over codependence.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Today I'm here hoping to be able to interview Joey Wilder. He is the creator, inventor, founder, you name it.
We have Joey Wilder, first time coming on the show.
But at that moment, I had a choice to make. I either hit this while it's hot, while people are hyped up about it, or kind of let it simmer out. And I've been told by many great mentors that it's all about the timing of things. As commonly, people pleasers pour into everyone else except themselves. And they put everyone else first, leaving themselves drained. And eventually, that internal combustion, you're going to implode and you're going to explode, whether that's on someone or in some way, shape, or form. And we've all done it. I've witnessed it. I've seen it by proxy. And it just reminds me of, these dynamics that so many men experience. And recently, although I've spent the last years working with high achieving married men, recently I've started to work with men that are more in their 20s, pre-30s. And they're in the decision-making process of, is this someone that I want to marry? And if we break up, she wants to maintain friends. And so today's training is for those guys those men that may be in a position where she wants to stay friends after the breakup, or she wants to stay friends in this nuanced way after the separation. We're going to dive into this question of, she wants to stay friends. What do I do? I've gotten this question in so many different ways, and there's many different dynamics, whether you have kids, you have businesses together, you have things that are raveled together, you have knots that are tied that you need to unravel. I'm going to dive into 6 different points today, but if you've ever found yourself asking the question, she wants to stay friends, what do I do? Now, if you've been in this space for a while, you already know that I'm not going to keep things surface level. So if you're in a place where you're healing, you're leading, you're building a business, you're raising kids, then this friends concept after a breakup can be the biggest emotional landmine that you step on without even realizing it. So today we're going to unpack it. We're going to unpack why she says it, what it actually means, when it's damaging, what to do if you have kids or business assets together, and how to navigate it without betraying yourself or your healing. I'm going to start with part 1 of 6. Now, this is why she wants to stay friends. Now, I really want to start with the why in this. Now, when I've asked men, friends and friendly are not the same. When I've asked other men, does it feel like a compliment? Some of them think it is. It feels like she still wants me in her life, and maybe there's a chance. But 9 times out of 10, that offer isn't for you. It's actually for her, because it usually comes from one of 3 places. 1, comfort. She's not ready to fully grieve the end. You were a source of familiarity, validation, security, and she doesn't want to give that up, regardless of the circumstances. And number 2, is potentially control. Now, she doesn't want to be with you, but also doesn't want anyone else to have you. I have seen this so many times in different ways. Now, staying friends gives her access to your emotions, your attention, your energy without the commitment. And number 3 is guilt, especially if she initiated it or that's where it started. Now, this is not to say that ownership is being taken. Now, saying let's still be friends makes her feel like she's not the bad guy. It soothes her conscience, even if it stabs your heart. But here's the truth. Just because she feels better staying friends doesn't mean that you'll heal better. Staying friends after separation or a breakup is like trying to detox while sipping poison every single night. It's like having that little dose. You will never get the full release because you'll be stuck in this place of limbo. Limbo is not a good place to be in. Because if you're in limbo, you're not together, you're not apart, and you're also not moving on, and your soul knows it. So pause for a second and think about the why. I have a gentleman that I'm working with currently, and granted, the fights that they've had, him and his partner, they still can't close the door. They still want to be friends. That was the words that he sent me when he reached out to me the other night. And that may mean that maybe she still cares, but that hope and that craving for connection, that longing for significance, especially for us as men who lead, protect, and love deeply, that can override our logic. And today I want to tell you that hope without boundaries will crush you. So when it comes to what she actually means when she says that and what to do about it, especially if there's kids, here's the kicker. She's trying to preserve the comfort, not commitment. She's trying to preserve your emotional availability, your presence, your protection, the energy that you gave, but she no longer wants the intimacy, the depth, or polarity that made you two lovers. And you, my friend, can't afford to be her emotional safety net. Because while she goes and finds herself, like it just further reminds me of the guy that I've been working with. And I'm not going to give out names, but they've been together for years. I believe like 3 to 4 years. And they don't have kids, but they kind of have a business together. It's a small business. And from the outside, they looked like a really cool couple. But realistically, the fire had gone out and she started pulling away. And when they asked for space, it looked different than it may in a healthy way. The space led to things being broken in the house and him having to physically leave. And every time he started to emotionally detach and create space and focus on him, he would get these messages that said like, I miss our talks. You're still my best friend. Can we still be close? And he thought that that meant she was coming back. So he stayed available. He paused dating. He put his life on hold because he didn't want to hurt her. And you know what happened? She started dating another man. And while still calling him every night, when she was stressed and confiding in him, he was her emotional husband, the safe, predictable option, and the other guy got the sex, the fun, and the newness. And he just got the stress dumps. And that's when he decided to give me a call. And I wasn't aware of all this before we had started working together. And he thought that I remember he told me, I thought that staying friends was mature. But I feel like I've been friend zoned by my ex. And that's exactly what happens when you lean into this in the beginning. Now, I'm going to parlay into part 2, which is the cost of being her friend. Now, let's break this down psychologically. As men, we're wired for purpose and clarity. And when we don't have clarity, when we're stuck in this like gray area, this limbo, we just leak energy. Now think about it like this. You're a general trying to lead an army, but your orders change every single day. One day she's warm, the next day she's cold. One day she texts, I miss you. The next day she ignores you. That kind of emotional whiplash just kills your confidence, your focus, your libido, your decision-making, and you're not free. You're just kind of orbiting, oscillating from one feeling to the next. And the worst part is that you're not just stuck, you're doing it to yourself. You're saying yes to breadcrumbs while starving for real connection. So if you're relating to this at all, here's the question for you. Are you willing to be the villain in her story so you can be the hero in your own? Because choosing your peace, setting a boundary, saying, I'm not available for this friendship right now, it might piss her off. It probably will. And she might call you cold, mean, heartless, all of these other colorful words. But the truth is, she'll respect you more for choosing self-respect over codependence. I know so many men that get caught up in that dogma of being somewhere in between. Somewhere in between wanting to do better and know better. And in this perfectly parlays into part 3, which when there are kids involved. Now, in this, you can't just cut someone off because you have kids together. And I've had so many men ask me that. And I get it. I'm a father too, and it looks differently for me. But this part requires precision, not passivity. And here's what I want you to understand. Co-parenting is not the same as staying friends. And co-parenting is not the same as parallel parenting. You need to understand the difference. And I'll do another podcast on that another time and probably bring some guys on that navigate this real time in different ways so you can hear their input as well. Because I believe on leaning on those that experience it real time and share it inside our community. And maybe some of them will come on and share some anecdotes with us in another call that we'll set up. But in this, you can communicate clearly. You can make joint decisions for your children. And you can be at school events or sports games together without talking about your day, comforting her emotionally, and sharing your inner life. Now, I'm not saying that your child needs to see fake friendship, but they do need to see emotional maturity. And that's when they witness you setting boundaries with grace, speaking calmly but firmly, and protecting your emotional health, because they learn emotional regulation. And guess what? A stable, emotionally sovereign father will do more for a child's development than 2 codependent, confused, friendly parents ever could. Like, we've all seen and heard of these dynamics just going south, and I've had guys share with me how, like, on their weekends, like, all of these things will be scheduled, and I get it. I have no idea how so many things happen in kids' lives. Like, it's wild. There's just so many activities that happen. It's insane, regardless of the state you're in. But in that, I really want to parlay into part 4, which is if you share a business, an asset, real estate, anything of that sort. For the entrepreneurs listening, the ones who've built things with her, this is where it sort of gets a little tactical. Because whether you co-own a business, property, or even just have these intertwined financials, you're going to be tempted to blur emotional and professional lines. And I've seen this myself. It is so saddening when someone blurs professional lines due to themselves being hurt. I empathize for those that show up that way, because there needs to be a level of compartmentalization that needs to happen. Because if you both are working together in a professional way and something is done maliciously, it shows and reflects more on you than them. And it may feel good in the moment, but you need to set healthy emotional and professional lines. I'll start with that, because she may, if you keep things tied together, she may want to check in under the guise of business, and she'll ask for your thoughts or her next move, and she'll want to debrief, kind of like you used to, because you're the one who knows her best. Don't fall for it. This is when you have to treat the relationship like a company acquisition. Now you need to set new terms of engagement, who owns what, who makes decisions, what platforms you'll communicate through, what's the schedule, and if necessary, bring in a neutral third party. Because the goal is to not stay connected. The goal is to separate clearly so no one's power is compromised and no one's healing is delayed. this is probably one of the more sticky parts, especially if you have a highly profitable business. It reminds me of a gentleman that once upon a time I almost worked with. And as we were getting on a call, he shares with me, tomorrow I'm being indicted. And apparently, this was a large federal crime. Like it was on the SEC's website. I guess his soon-to-be ex-wife had called in a tip to the FTC, and they led an investigation, and something to do with insurance that had been claimed on properties that went through like a natural disaster, but there was more to it. It was basically insurance fraud, and she wasn't aware of it. And turns out it was the guy's business partner in the end of it. However, they all went down because everyone went down with the ship, including her, who was listed as the beneficiary. And so everyone went away for, I believe it was 7 years, and he got out on parole. They both got out on parole in, I think it was like a year, something like that. But they had all of these assets together, and because someone did something malicious, that they were trying to hurt someone else, it led to them all going to prison. And thank God she had a sister who was able to take over watching their children while they were in prison. So I share this because this happens in many different ways. I've experienced this myself. I have seen this done to so many men. And it's unfortunate because every single man I speak to that has built something with someone else says, I built it for them so they would have more freedom in their life. Like every single man can agree with that. And for some reason, that's a problem in the end. And then it all gets burned down to the ground. That is the most childish thing that anyone can do. That is the same thing as, well, if you don't want to play with me in your sandbox, I'm going to go play in my sandbox. And you like kick someone's sandcastle over. Fucked up. Don't kick people's sandcastle over. But I want to shift into part 5. And this is called rebuilding from the inside out. So at this point, if you have gone through these steps and you're like, what's the actual path forward? Like, what do I do from here? The first thing you do is you get distance. And if possible, you can go full no contact for 30 to 60 days. And this doesn't mean like not communicating around the shared responsibilities. This means respecting your boundaries because it's not pretty, it's powerful, and it's not petty either. It resets your nervous system, it clears your thinking, and it cuts the cord. And if that's not possible because of kids or work, then you can move to modified contact. You can keep it brief, keep it business, keep it neutral. But the next step in this is you need to reclaim your frame. Because your masculine frame, the frame that you know yourself to be, is the place where you don't explain your worth. You don't chase clarity from someone who doesn't have it. And you don't mistake attention for affection. And man, I've been guilty of this. There's times where I've mistaken attention for affection and like a response, any little thing. And it's not sad. It's a harsh reality when people care so deeply. Because in this, the next step is you need to refocus on your mission. And this is where you double down on your physical health, your purpose, your finances, and your spiritual center, whether you have faith or maybe you're figuring out what that path looks like. And sometimes it's in the midst of fear and uncertainty that faith reveals the need for hands larger than our own. And you get to figure out what that is for you. But it's during this time where no woman wants to come back to a man who's still bleeding from her exit. And this is not to say that you need to welcome that person back with welcome arms and open arms. But when you refocus on your mission, you start putting you first. And it's going to be tough because things are you're healing, you're grieving. There's a process that you get to go through as you're moving through this. In this next part, there's so many men that I meet with that ask me, will she come back? Now, let's answer the question you're not asking but thinking. If I cut contact, will she come back? Now, maybe. But that's not the point, because when she does and if she does, you want to be the man who can choose, not the man who still needs her. Because realistically, if you are holding on, waiting for someone to come back and choose you, that's part of the problem. Because you've created the story inside your mind that you are not lovable and you are not chosen. And the only way that you can feel loved again is if this person chooses you, when that's not the truth. There's so many times that people won't get chosen. And that's fundamentally what everyone wants. It started when we didn't get chosen on the handball court, when we didn't get chosen in the sport, when we were the last one picked. We weren't the first. We weren't the optimal choice. It creates this dogma in our mind of wanting to be chosen. And then maybe you wrote a letter to someone in like elementary school and you said, check yes if you like me, no if you don't. And then they put a third box and say never. When you step into choosing yourself, you are no longer an option for others. Because if you can spend time with yourself, by yourself productively, that makes you a man that can reclaim his edge. Because it doesn't come from being reactive and it doesn't come from proving yourself, but it comes from learning to stand still in the fire and not flinch. Because you don't owe someone access just because someone once had it. You don't need to stay friends just to be kind, and you don't need permission to walk away. Your next chapter doesn't start with a person. It starts with you, because when you choose to let go, even when it hurts, you can start walking free and actually feeling grounded and alive and fully in your frame. There's no longer these emotional straps that are holding you or keeping you from actually moving forward. Because if this hits home at all, sit with it. Actually sit with it. Because if you haven't started to step into reclaiming what's yours and your emotional power, then re-listen to this and ask yourself, like, do I want to be the villain in someone else's story so I can be the hero of my own? Because if it comes back to hurting someone or having a difficult conversation or spending time alone, that doesn't last forever. But the longer that you exist in the place that you don't desire to be, it will. Because you have a choice at the end of the day. Well, gentlemen, that's all I got for you. I appreciate y'all being here. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.